What's up everyone, it's Sinistry, and today we are going to take a look at how casual games hook us from the very first play session. I'm sure you can relate to them being super addictive and taking up tons and tons of your time, so today I want to take a look at what is behind that kind of addiction to these casual games. If you like this kind of analysis or you like casual games, make sure to like and subscribe because that's really what my channel is all about. But now let's jump in and briefly just discuss what a casual game is. If you're unfamiliar with the term casual game, or you're just not really sure how I'm using it, it's pretty much a game that appeals to a broader audience than just the typical gamer. Even though casual games can be very different between each other in terms of like their gameplay or what the goals are, they do tend to have very similar elements that all kind of help to make you get hooked. And starting off, we're going to talk about the basic controls but complex gameplay. So when it comes to any game, gameplay is pretty much the biggest factor between whether a game is good or bad. I mean, think about the games that you really love versus the games that you really cannot stand. Most of the time, the reason why you can't stand a game is because the gameplay is like too hard or it's just very confusing. However, one thing that really appeals to a broad audience with casual games is that the gameplay is typically pretty basic as far as controls go. I mean, take a look at Sims 4. It is literally the most simple game of all time. You just point and click. But what makes these games so special is even within this very basic control scheme, there is so much for you to do. Let's take a look again at Sims. I mean, yeah, you can just point and click, but you can have tons of different interactions with different objects. When you talk to someone, you have a whole slew of different interactions you can have with them. There are even specific interactions for your environment. So if you're in one particular world, you can do certain things that you can't do in another world. Basically, these games having very basic controls but having very complex gameplay is what makes them so addictive. I mean, you just want to keep coming back and trying new options and seeing what you can do within the gameplay, and there's so much replayability, it's kind of crazy. The fact that these options kind of seem limitless is really a big factor in getting people to come back day after day. But moving on from the gameplay, let's discuss the soundtracks. Soundtracks in casual games tend to be some of the catchiest. I mean, they are not always the most complex. Think about a game like Slime Rancher, but they are so addictive and they just have that kind of feeling of home and familiarity. I'm sure that if you have ever played Stardew Valley, you have your favorite track from that game. I have a few of my favorites, and every time I hear them, I'm just so excited to be playing the game. But even beyond that, I'm a little bit suspicious that casual game soundtracks have the pop music in a store effect. So in case you're unaware, when you go to like a grocery store or a clothing store and they're playing pop music, it's actually because there's a psychological effect to that. It's been kind of shown in some studies that pop music actually makes people want to spend more money when they're in stores, and I feel like casual game soundtracks have a similar effect in these games. When you're hearing a song that's just very pleasant, it's very low key, but it still keeps you engaged, and you can kind of tune it out after a while, it'll just make you want to keep playing this game. There's like nothing that's really jarring about it. I guess you could kind of lump in like sound effects to this whole category as well, because the sound effects in these games also tend to be pretty low-key and familiar. So even though you're not listening to like pop songs in these games, I think that would have a totally different effect, but I think that the fact that these soundtracks are super low-key really just keeps you wanting to play the game again and again. Another factor that keeps people coming back is being able to form bonds within the game. So let's be real, casual games do not have the emotional depth of something like an RPG. I mean, obviously those games are really narrative focused in a lot of ways, and casual games don't always have a strong narrative. However, narrative doesn't really matter if you still can form emotional bonds with the characters. Something like Sims 4 allows you to create your own narratives, so that doesn't really count, but think about the difference between that and something like Stardew Valley. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's ever been attached to a Stardew character. Like, if we marry, we are ride or die. And honestly, even just like the kids in town town, the random people that you encounter like one time and you never talk to them again, it just adds kind of an element of you really want to know what's gonna happen to these people. And I have kind of a theory that the more people are in this game, the more that you can learn about different characters, the more it'll pull you in. Because honestly, I would think about games like Stardew, maybe even like Dreamlight, that kind of have all these characters that I really want to get to know. And I literally cannot stop playing them. I want to play these games all the time. I mean, when I first got Stardew, I played that game and nothing else for literally months and played it like anytime I had more than 5 minutes of free time. And Dreamlight I'm a little bit obsessed with right now in much the same way. I literally play that game as much as possible when I'm not doing something for a video. So it just kind of goes to show that characters really do make these games special. But that is not the only thing. I think that actually the repetition of these games also adds to the replayability and to getting people hooked. If you've played any casual game, you have probably realized that there is a ton of repetition. Again, think about any of the games that I've mentioned. You are literally just doing the same tasks over and over and over again. You might be farming, you might be mining, you might be fighting, whatever you're doing, you're just gonna keep doing it for sometimes literally hours. But these tasks are really predictable and they don't require a lot of thought, which makes them really good games to play after school or after work or when you just need a mental break. And because the repetition typically leads to very short-term rewards, like you might be grinding certain materials, you get that kind of, I guess, dopamine boost that makes you feel good the whole time you're playing. So I'm pretty certain that the repetition is actually a big factor of why these games are so addictive, even if you think that they are also boring for the same reason. And finally, I think the last reason why these games are so addictive is because there's really no stakes or low stakes in all of these games. For example, take a look at Slime Rancher or Slime Rancher 2. If you die, you just come back and time passes a couple hours ahead. Like, yes, you do have a mess to clean up, but it's not all that bad. If you take longer than average to complete a quest, something like the community center in Stardew, there's literally no downside. Like, you don't really have a punishment for not completing tasks at the fastest possible rate. And honestly, bad things typically don't happen in these games. Like, yes, there is usually some element of negativity somewhere, but it's not like, you know, catastrophe. It's not really dark or really gory or anything like that. You know, a lot of games, they're just really intense, and sometimes it's a bit too emotionally investing and it can really wear you out, but these games are just so easygoing. Another big aspect that kind of plays into this is if for some reason, like let's say you had a power outage, you don't really lose all that much progress in these games. Whereas if you're playing like some kind of RPG, like an action RPG or something like that, and you don't have checkpoints for a long period of time, well then you're SOL. But in these games, yes, it might be annoying if you were like farming a crap ton of items or something, but in reality, it's like, it's just time that you won't get back, but it's not really hurting your progress in the game. And most of these times, these games allow you to save at pretty much any time. There might be some limitations here or there, but for the most part, you can really save whenever, which means you don't have to worry about waiting, you know, half an hour to be able to save. If you need to leave, if you need to go do something else, if something happens that's urgent, you don't have to worry about your save getting lost. All of this kind of allows for a very relaxing experience and again just kind of rewards you for playing these games rather than games that might stress you out. So to kind of summarize, you know, casual games may not be my favorite genre of all time. If you want to see my favorite genre video, you can go check out Why I Love Roguelites, which is going to be somewhere up here. But it's really hard to ignore that these games are super fun and super addictive, and honestly, they are probably the games I've played the most in my entire life. I really love casual games, and I'm sure that you have one that you enjoy, so let me know what it is down in the comments below. I'm always looking for new games, but if you also have an interest in one of the games I cover, feel free to recommend any video ideas or tell me what you love about this game. And again, make sure to like and subscribe if you like casual game content. That is really the focus of my channel at this point, and I am so looking forward to making more videos like this and like some of my others for all of you. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.